Hi, this is Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that spotlights the stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So sit back, relax, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know.
Well, my guest today is a mainstay in the Northwest Indiana music scene. Anytime you talk to a musician in the local area, odds are his name is going to come up. He's a member of several bands, including Digital Hair, the Crawpuppies, the Mega Beatles, and when he's not a member of those bands, he's playing acoustic around the area. Very, very busy man, and the owner and manager of Front Porch Music in Valparaiso. Will you please welcome the uber-talented Chad Clifford? Welcome aboard, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm quite busy. To hear it all back, you're kind of like, whoa, who's this guy?
And the strange thing is you still have time for Michelle and the family, too.
Well, I do. Yes, I do. Try to keep my priorities in line there for sure.
Awesome. Very good. First off, Leslie and I want to wish you and Michelle a very Merry Christmas, all to the best to your family. And I hope they get a chance to spend some time with you this holiday season. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, I carve out plenty of time. You know, I've got all my kids are boys, and they're all kind of teenagers now, so they get enough time with the old man. It's not a problem.
And they're all into music too, right?
Yeah, they all are. You know, I'd say surprisingly, but I'm not really too surprised by it. They've all kind of picked up on, you know, what I'm doing. And it's a blessing, you know. All my sons are quite talented, and they've all kind of got their own take on trying to outdo the old man. So it's work. It's good.
I like that too. And another congratulations to Valpo on being the 5A state champion in football. Way to go, Valpo!
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, we never had that luxury when I was in school. We did go to state a couple times. But I was always more concerned with the after party because my band in high school, Digital Hair, we used to play the after shows. So if the team won, it made for a great show. If the team lost, it was usually a drag. So, you know, I looked at all that sports through the musician lens.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, the question I'm going to ask you: how did your magical musical tour start? How did this all begin? I mean,
when I was about 5 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night, and my dad was laughing at the TV, and he was watching the movie Help by the Beatles that he'd seen about 100 times, and I'd never seen before. And I remember waking up on the couch, and I remember vividly the scene where the Beatles are on the bicycles, and they're you know, doing their little comedy bit, and then the next scene they're playing in a studio. They're doing "You're Gonna Lose That Girl," and it just blew my mind. I was like, Dad, what is this? He goes, well, that's the Beatles. And even at 4 or 5 years old, I'd already heard, you know, plenty of Led Zeppelin and Beatles and Stones, but I hadn't, you know, I didn't. Excuse me, I wasn't aware of what I was hearing, you know. But then when my dad showed me the Beatles album, I was just floored by, especially Paul McCartney at a young age. Just, you know, just seemed like the coolest, nicest guy in the world, and funny, and just I remember watching those old movies, and he showed me the Help Beatles album, and I proceeded to wear that out to the point that my family had to do an intervention and introduce me to Rubber Soul because they were so. And then I you know, unfortunately did, you know, play through all my dad's old Beatle albums and pretty much ruin them, but I bought them all for him on cassette in the 80s, so to make up for ruining his records. But yeah, no, it was obsession. You know, the Beatles thing was, you know, I just had never thought of that. Now my dad was in bands, and he now prefers golf to playing the drums. But my dad was a drummer in bands, so in the 80s I'd go watch my dad's bands play it whenever there was an all-ages show, like at Lake Eliza or different places. I'd watch him, and I was always floored by, you know, the brotherhood and the camaraderie and all that stuff that comes along with the band. So as I got older into middle school and high school, the whole punk rock thing was taken off in the alternative music. So I was really into like bands like U2 and REM and So I started playing in bands in middle school, like most kids do, and we were god awful terrible. But that's the thing is, I pretty much at that early age decided this is what I'm going to do. Whether I'm good at it or not, I don't know. So thankfully, I was pretty decent at it because I was able to do that. I think the biggest thing, though, is that I was willing to sing. Everybody I knew wanted to play guitar or drums, and I started off kind of playing drums, and I beat on a guitar a little bit, but I'm primarily a singer, know. And I think the main thing, Rick, was that I was just a guy that was willing to do it. I was like, this doesn't bother me. I'll do it. So I was very lucky that I got called a lot and got to play. I always was fortunate to play with the top tier musicians in the area because I'd be willing to sing,
And you know something, folks? He is a very good singer, too. I got to tell you. There's nothing he can't do. This guy's just absolutely incredible. Leslie had a question for you. She wanted to know what was the very first Beatles song you learned.
First Beatles song I learned was probably You Gotta Hide Your Love Away because there was no bar chords in it. So bar chords, for those that don't play guitar, are the most challenging of chords because you got to use all your fingers, and they're kind of harder to do. So I would say that's probably one of the first. But the first song I ever learned was Gloria, Gloria, because that's just the E, A, and D. And my dad showed me that. He tried to show me House of the Rising Sun, which I eventually learned, but that took me a while to master because there's like 6 chords in that one, and they go pretty quick. But I was lucky. My pop spent a lot of time showing me, about early rock and roll. Right. And they got me. I got a guitar from my grandmother at a real early age, this little Sears guitar that I still have, and I used to do concerts for my grandmother. I would sing into the vacuum cleaner hose because I didn't have a microphone, and I'd play my little Sears acoustic guitar, and she was my first audience, and I would she'd watch me for hours, and it's awesome. Funny because there are days still when I go and I play a gig somewhere, like a solo gig, and I still remember those. It's Friday night, I got a gig tonight. It just used to just be in the living room, but now I've kind of branched out a bit.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, anytime that I was living in St. Louis for 22 years. I was on the radio down there. And every time I'd come to town and talk about the St. Louis music scene, I was always told about the local music scene and this band called the Crawpuppies. They played everywhere. They were on everybody's lips. They were the band. How did Crawpuppies evolve?
Crawpuppies evolved in a really interesting way. I'd been in that digital hair band for quite a long time, and we had done some shopping of record labels and doing some things and winning some awards and kind of being, and then like a lot of those things, it just kind of dissolved overnight. Just different people, without different people took on different opportunities that made it so they couldn't commit to the digital hair project anymore. So I was a little bit cynical. I just said, my time with this is done. I'm going to do some other things. And I sat at home for about a year and watched The Simpsons and really didn't do anything. And my wife one day came along and said, "You've got to do something," because I was just in this kind of funk. So I started playing acoustic guitar a little more. And I started playing with my friend that was in digital hair, a man named Mike Moore, who's been a lifelong friend. And he and I would do these kind of duo gigs where he and I would both go out and we'd play. And we landed a gig at a place called Angelo's Sicilian Cart in Maryville. And it was Mike and I, and we would play every Thursday, and friends would just kind of come along. And one day, this bass player named Aaron Hedges, this would be about 1994, he just showed up, and Mike and I are playing. He goes, "Hey, can I jam with you guys?" And every song Mike and I played, Aaron just knew. And I'm looking at Mike, and he's looking at me. I'm like, "Do you know this guy?" We didn't know him at all, but he just showed up every week. And Aaron was working with another guy named Chris Carpus, the drummer in the Crawpuppies now. So the four of us kind of started the digital hair band, the Crawpuppies band on stage at Angelo's. And it was just kind of like, we would just, you didn't have the technology back then, we would just, we just play some old Stones tunes and Beatles and Doors and Zeppelin and Chili Peppers and kind of whatever was happening. And other people would show up, so some guy would show up and he'd say, "Hey, do you know this Tom Petty song?" And we'd be like, "No," but we'd go and figure it out in the back room, and we'd get up and play it with this guy. And then we'd be like, "Oh, add that one to the list." So the Crawpuppies kind of became this band that had, that evolved on the stage. We just kind of came out of, I don't say we came out of nowhere, but we just would every Wednesday. I had bills to pay, so I had a Wednesday gig, and people would show up, and then before long, people started saying, "Well, we really like your band. Well, what's the name of your band?" And we didn't really even have a name. We were just like the guys that played at Wednesdays. And one day, the guy said to me, "I want to book your band, but you guys need to come up with a name." And I jokingly looked out the window, and right next to Angelo's was a Popeye's chicken restaurant. And on the sign it said, "Tonight, Crawpuppies." I said, "Well, that's our band. They just put it on the wrong sign." Just kind of joking, And so that kind of became the name of the band.
So you could have been Dirty Rice.
Yeah, we could have been Dirty Rice. We could have been about anything, And then, you always say, well, one day we'll change the name to a cooler name than the Crawpuppies, but all the cool names are taken. So you just kind of, and then people start getting tattoos with your band name on it. And you're like, well, we can't really change the name now. There are at least two that I know of. I've never seen, for the record, I've seen pictures, but I've never seen, because there are two tattoos I've been told. Of Crawpuppies logos, which is cool. But that's kind of how it started. And then the Crawpuppies were kind of just. We got popular by being the band that would do anything. We were the band that could play a music festival. We were the band that, we played some weird stuff. We played a shoe carnival grand opening. We played a K&M Superstore in the women's shoe department. We did some great high profile gigs, and we've done low profile gigs. We've played people's weddings. We've played, celebrations of life. We've played, everything. And that was kind of how the band started. And, at last count, we've got over 2,000 cover songs we can play, and no show's the same. We don't ever plan anything out. It's a very natural, organic kind of thing. And there's only been a few membership changes, really. The new guy has only been in the band since 2003, so
19 years. Holy cow.
Yeah. So it is funny how, so it's a strong brotherhood, and Aaron and Chris and I have really been together since the start of it in 94. And then there's only one other guitar player, Angelo Chico, who he moved on to some other things. And once in a while, we'll all get together and still play. And, it's kind of all about, for the Crawpuppies, at least starting off, it was all about getting in that moment and kind of playing music on the edge there. Someone would say, "Hey, do you know this song?" And we didn't, we were good at faking our way through it and getting a presentable version. And then the second time we played it, it was killer, because we'd already done it once,
No moments like the Blues Brothers playing the wreck of the old 97, right?
Right, exactly. No,
but I bet you'd have it done by the end of the evening.
And I always tell young people and students, I always say, sometimes, music is 50% playing, but it's at least 50% listening, And if you don't know what to do, just lay low. And that's really the beauty of the Crawpuppies. And my favorite thing about the band is, in addition to the brotherhood, it's like we all know each other so well that there's times we don't even really talk much. We just get up and play, and it's like we had that musical conversation.
One additional member is Mike Curtis. And I got a fun story about that. Mike's father used to be the cantor over there at St. Bridget's Church, and I was the altar server that was right below Mr. Curtis. I loved him so very much through the years, and I just know that if he was singing, I was going to enjoy Mass, despite the fact that Father Vogt was going to yell at me for doing something wrong.
That's interesting. There is a song on the Crawpuppies album. It's the weirdest song that we had ever recorded. It's a song called Masquerade. And as a little tribute to Mike's dad's singing a little operatic at the end of it.
Wow.
We might have made it backwards. I don't remember. We were getting very, very Sgt. Pepper, I Am the Walrus experimental on that song, which is a really cool song. But it does feature Mike Curtis's dad singing, and it's beautiful. He had a great, beautiful voice.
He did. Very much so.
Yeah, and we included that, and and the Curtis family. I always call them like Hobart's answer to the Jacksons, because they were all musical, and they were all, and they all were very. And Mike's dad was very, very supportive. Oh, yeah. And Mike Curtis has been, he's true blue, great friend and great musical contributor, and he and I work well together on a lot of that Crawpuppy stuff. The stuff he came up with, guitar solo wise and just chord structure wise, is just amazing.
Well, I know we've been talking for quite a while, and I know the listeners are probably saying, well, let's hear some music. The first song we're going to feature is my personal favorite, one that we hear at quite a few of the gigs. It's called Slave to the Puppeteer. What's the story behind this one?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I've always wondered where that came from, because I sometimes write songs and then I go back and try to figure out what I was trying to say, which is weird. That song's kind of about my musical journey. It's almost like the song is written from my guitar's perspective of me. As weird as it sounds, it's my guitar saying, there's days I'm this guy's slave, and then there's days he's my slave. Because it's kind of the way that my relationship with music is. There's a line in there about too much will kill you, not enough, and you're as good as dead. And that's kind of the thing. There's days I play so many shows, and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get through it? And then I get a night off, and I look through my phone, and everyone's out having a good time, and I'm sitting at home thinking, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I playing? Why I got a night off? It is funny, because in the artist, in the musician's brain, there's always that little bit of, I don't want to say self-doubt, but that little bit of feeling the most alive when they're doing this. What I mean? It's and I am blessed. I've played, at last count, 6,000 gigs probably in my life, so I really don't need to prove anything, but you still do, just mentally, just to continue to grow. You just still feel this need to, so that's kind of what that song is written about. It's kind of the relationship between my guitar and myself from my guitar's perspective.
Okay. We're going to play that right now on the Someone You Should Know podcast. From Peaceful Amnesty, here is Slave to the Puppeteer, the Crawpuppies.
Your voice never heard. I'm a slave to the puppeteer. He is my master. He is my God. He gives me life right out of the box. His smallest reflex means the world to me. I'm a slave to the puppeteer.
Great song. I love that song. It's called Slave to the Puppeteer from the Crawpuppies. Lead singer Chad Clifford is my guest today. It's strange, Chad, before we played the song, you were talking about the fact that you perform thousands and thousands of gigs, and on those nights off, you're kind of wondering what's going on. I'm in the process of doing the same thing. I started in radio back in 1978, and I'm getting ready to retire. And the idea of not being on the air scares me a little bit. But that's why I'm doing this podcast show, to still stay in that little vein there, still with the music and still being able to, have my voice out there and such. But, it's going to be very hard for you to actually hang up your guitar for the final time. It's going to be hard. I don't think you're ever going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I my joke is, well, as long as the phone's ringing, I'll go out singing. If the phone stops ringing, then I might not have a choice. But I look at a guy like Paul McCartney, who doesn't need to make music for any particular reason, and he still goes out, and I mean, when you feel that love from an audience, and you feel that. I don't know what else I would do. So I hope that I can keep the quality up and that people keep coming. And I hope that I'm smart enough to realize if it's starting to dwindle that I maybe scale it back. But I don't foresee that in the future. Like I said, I've already got 2023 is probably 80% booked. So it's a good problem. As long as I'm smart and make time for the other people in my life that need my attention, I'll be okay. Yes. I think that's the trick is the balance, But yeah, I can't foresee a time when I would want to quit. But I mean, there are physical limitations. I've got friends that were great guitar players that are having, as you get older here, arthritis issues, or your voice kind of starts to go, or. But I think the trick is, when people ask me, is by not stopping. I think if I took a 10-year break, I'd be done. Or if I even took a year off, I probably couldn't do it anymore, because it's like exercise,
Yeah, right.
You stop doing it, and all of a sudden it's a lot harder to jump back into it.
Yeah. When the Crawpuppies aren't busy, they team up with other bands. They team up with other bands and form the Mega Beatles. Right. This is a local thing, folks, that if you're outside of the Northwest Indiana area, this is something very, very special. This happens several times during the year, and it's going to be happening in just a couple days. Matter of fact, this Saturday, the 17th, it's going to be happening. It is happening at the Civic Auditorium in LaPorte. The Mega Beatles come together. That's the Crawpuppies and several other musicians from around the area, and it is something very, very special. Who are the other groups that come together on this, along with the Crawpuppies?
Well, it's really the Crawpuppies and then a band called the Chris and Lou Band, which are excellent friends of mine. Lou Someoneyoushouldknowpodcast is also on a side project with Mike Curtis called Rito, and they're an excellent original band. But Chris and Lou are kind of like I am. They kind of play all the time, and we carve out a couple times a year to do these shows, and we completely nerd out on the Beatles.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when I say that, I mean we don't dress up and all that stuff, and I don't act or play like I'm John Lennon or Paul McCartney. But what we do is we dissect these songs and try to replicate them as to the best of our abilities, and put on a show that puts the Beatles music of just the message of peace, love, and just feeling good. It's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel, playing the greatest music ever written with your best friends a couple times a year. I mean, you really can't beat it,
And getting paid to do it.
Yes. And having people come up to you and say, that was great, And this Mega Beatles project, it started in 2009 or 10. Maybe it was 2010. We were doing this, our friend Tom Collins, who owns the apple orchard, County Line Orchard.
Yeah, Hobart.
Yeah, he said, I'd like to do a show. I'd like to do a Beatles show, and I'd like to have you Crawpuppies play and the Chris and Lou Band play. And we played, and we each did our set, and we couldn't wait to get to our set, because then it's like, now we can play together. So we just started. We put the two bands together, and it was really magical, because we're all really, really tight and good friends, and it's not a high pressure thing to do. And then we brought in Chris Curtis, who's our keyboard player, kind of a guy that just studies all the samples and gets all the sounds and all, Yellow Submarine, all the background noise. I mean, he's got all of that stuff down. And much like us, we started doing a song, and then someone will start really, really digging in and like, oh, that's not the harmony. It's actually this. And it gets better and better all the time. And it's a big, powerful band because there's 9 of us up there. And it's not really that every song requires 9 of us, but the reality is we're all just tight friends. And what are you going to do? Tell your one friend, hey, you're not welcome to come out tonight, So
we saw the Beatles in the barn for the very first time this last year, and it was 4.5 hours. You guys played from like 7 to 11:30 that night, and it was just so much fun.
They usually want to kill me by the end of those shows because I do the set list, and everyone, everyone gives me advice, but everyone's like, well, let's do this one, and I'm like, okay. We're at 42 songs now. I mean, eventually you got to cut some of them. You know what I mean?
But what do you cut? That's the hardest part. One thing I want to give props to Mike Curtis on. You guys did Tomorrow Never Knows with the backward masking on it. And that floored me.
Yeah, he played the guitar backwards, so he learned the part forwards and then has a pedal that allows him to play it backwards. It was pretty insane. We used to do these shows, and they were exclusively for the nerdiest of Beatle fans. We didn't play. But then some people would say, well, there wasn't really very much early stuff. And there are people that really only love the early Beatles, and they think some of the other stuff is a little bit weird. So we try to balance the show a little bit. But I always want to give every show, I want to have an audience walk away and say, wow, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did Tomorrow Never Knows. Because I mean, it's not, there's some you got to do. They'll pretty much hang you if you don't do Hey Jude and Let It Be. I mean, they're not gonna leave till you've done them. But there's a lot of them that we get to do, and we've done a couple of albums. We did Sgt. Pepper almost in its entirety. We did a lot of the White Album. I'd say 80% of the White Album one year at the County Line Orchard. But, I mean, the reality with the Beatles stuff is the songs that get the people on the dance floor are the ones that they put the butts in the seats, and they help gateway people into the cooler.
A lot of kids at the shows, too. Which is really nice.
That's my favorite thing about it is seeing young kids, experiencing like I was, when I was a young kid. I always try to envision the Mega Beatles as a band that 10-year-old Chad would have been floored by, and it's gotten me into these opportunities. I used to go to Beatle festivals all the time, and I'd be just a little kid there, and now I play at them, and
I know
there's something. There's something odd, oddly romantic about it. You think, well, I was the kid in the audience, and now I'm up here, and there's other kids. I think that's beautiful.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to talk about a couple of those festivals coming up in just a bit here, but I wanted to ask you one favor the next time you start doing some Beatles stuff. Throw in some Ruddles tunes. Dirt Stig, very nasty.
Yes.
The Prefab Four.
Yeah. A lot of them. I love the Ruddles.
I do too. We're going to play some more Crawpuppies tunes here. The next one here is called She Comes Lovely from Worlds Much Bigger. Can you give us the backstory on that one?
She Comes Lovely is my, it's very 80s. It's my attempt at writing a song like a lot of the early 80s tunes that I used to listen to of, old REM and old NXS. She Comes Lovely is a little bit of a cheeky message about, these people that you meet, primarily girls, because it's she, right? That they'll come out to shows, and sometimes the band is what kind of gets them through the night, and that's kind of what that song's dedicated to.
We're going to play that song right now. She Comes Lovely from the Crawpuppies, featuring today's guest, Chad Clifford.
to write the words that fill the empty spaces in my head, commit them to the page before they slip away. I lost my self-control by digging you. I've dug myself into another hole. Now I can't see the sun or breathe the air outside. She comes lovely, but she leaves, she's a wreck. She falls down, where she falls down. She needs another chance, a self-inflicted victim in a sea of circumstance. She can't see the signs. She's losing her mind. She comes lovely, but she leaves, she's a wreck. I don't understand. Can't comprehend where she falls down, where she falls down. And I've been trying to pretend that this road's not at its end, and somehow love will all just work out fine. It's all in my mind. It's all in my mind. Most of the time, it's all in my she leaves me a wreck. I don't understand. I can't hold her hand when she falls down. When she falls down.
She Comes Lovely, the Crawpuppies, with today's guest from the Crawpuppies and the Mega Beatles and digital hair, my friend Chad Clifford. Chad, we were talking about festivals, Beatles festivals and such. You got to do something this last year that many Beatles fans could only dream of. You and your wife, Michelle, went on a magical mystery tour of Beatles' famous haunts in Britain. You got a chance to even play a set at the legendary Cavern Club. Can you kind of share some of the moments? We lived vicariously through all your Facebook posts and the videos that Michelle
wife
posted.
She did a wonderful job of keeping, getting the word out about this trip. Well, I did this trip in conjunction with a Valpo travel agency called Authentic Irish Tours. And my friend Martin Hughes is kind of one of the head guys there. he and John Hanley, they run this little travel place. And I had met Martin back when I was, he used to manage TJ Maloney's in Maryville, which was kind of part of the Star Plaza. And it was this great little Irish bar. And I'm Irish, so Martin and I got along real well. And, we're both big U2 fans. And so Martin and I had always talked about doing something, like doing a trip together. And I said, he came out and saw the Mega Beatles, and he said, we ought to do this trip where you go to England and we share your experience with, we were hoping to get 20, 30 couples. We got 8, which was a good start, 8 couples, but you always got to do the first one, and these people were awesome. We just had the time of our lives together. And, for them, it was cool because we're hanging out on a bus and, going to different restaurants and bars and just seeing these crazy sights, these, the Westminster Abbey and the Buckingham Palace all together. And on the bus, we're singing songs and talking about music, and I'm just getting to know these people that are my neighbors. And we got to experience John Lennon's boyhood home and Paul McCartney's boyhood home. There's a Beatles and a rock and roll museum, kind of like our Hard Rock Museum, Hall of Fame. And just going to Abbey Road and going to all these, every place that a Beatles fan would want to go to. And then it kind of got capped off by me doing a performance at the Cavern Club, where I did a little bit of an afternoon show. And the guy that booked the Cavern Club, who I'd kind of I'd say become a friend, but, I didn't know him real well until I got there, but we were Facebook friends, and he was impressed by the show and asked me to come back. So I ended up doing 3 musical sets, and 2 of them with this guy that's the head guy at the Cavern. And so it was awesome because these people, we all hung out all week, and then I got on stage and they're like, that's our friend. It was like, for them, it was like, and for me, it was great. It was like having like a dozen aunts and uncles out in the crowd, and cousins. Wow. And they're all like, yeah, come on. So it was completely magical, awesome experience for sure. And we're doing it again in 2024, and you and Leslie should come along.
We've already got money put aside for this one.
Yeah,
we will be a part of it already. We know about that.
It was absolutely great, and really the fun part was me sharing my love of Beatles with people that maybe aren't as fanatical as me, and watching them kind of light up as they're experiencing all of this. We're all experiencing this together.
Wow. In my 44 years of being in music, of course, 27, 28 years of that was in rock radio. And I had a love for the Beatles, but the way you guys do your sets, it allowed me to relive the moments that I love the most of the Beatles. And I thank you for that because, like I said, Leslie's mad at me. She says, we should have gone on this one. We'll go on the next one.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty easy when it's authentic, and that was my only problem with doing this tour before. And good old Martin, my buddy, he's a typical Irishman. He's a good salesman, and he'd be like, "You got to push the trip, Chad." And I felt weird pushing something I hadn't experienced, but now having been there, I'm much better at it because now I can really tell you what it's going to be. Having never really even traveled abroad, I didn't know what to expect, but it was awesome, and I just now I kind of even sit back and think, who were these people that got to do this? Because you get back into your everyday life, and you're like, what a great opportunity that was for us.
So we're going to play another Crawpuppy song, another favorite of mine. Sorry, a little indulgent here. This is Sunflower Girl. What's the backstory on Sunflower Girl, Chad?
Sunflower Girl I wrote in the early 90s, and it's kind of a joke because you can hear the Beatle influence in most of my songs.
That's why I included it.
Yeah, well, this one actually you probably hear more of my Rolling Stones influence because I was trying to not write such a Beatle-y song. So this one kind of sounds a bit Stonesy. I've had this one for a long time. I think my writing of this song is when I first found out that I was going to be a dad, and Michelle and I were going to have a baby. And I, for some reason, insisted that it was going to be a little girl and it was going to be my little sunflower girl. Well, I had 4 boys, so I never did get my sunflower girl. So this song's for the daughter I never got. Maybe it'll be my granddaughter someday.
Awesome. Very good. Here's Sunflower Girl from the Crawpuppies featuring today's guest, Chad Clifford, on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Child in nature, she comes undone. If I can't make you stay, then you just have to go. Well, darling, there's some things we'll never know. My little sunflower girl. Like a shadow, she heals across my wounds. If I can't make you change, then you just have to grow. Well, darling, there's some things you'll never know. My little sunflower girl. My little sunflower girl. And I watch her as she grows, praying to the only summer God she'll ever know. Yeah, my little sunflower girl. Yeah, 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 yeah. My little sunflower girl. Oh, yeah. And if I can make you stay, then you just have to grow. Well, darling, there's some things you'll never know. My little sunflower girl. My little sunflower girl. My little sunflower girl. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My little sunflower girl.
Sunflower Girl from the Crawpuppies featuring today's guest, Chad Clifford from the Crawpuppies. Now, fans get to see the band performing with everything running under control. Everybody's rocking and having a good time. But that's not necessarily the way things work. We all have those gigs where not everything goes right. I've worked at gigs, gone out to remotes and forgot, a piece of gear at the station and such. This is called Tales from the Road. This is those infamous road stories of getting to and from a gig, things that didn't go right on stage, forgetting a musical instrument, forgetting the words to a song, whatever it might be. Chad, what is your Tales from the Road?
Well, yeah, I'd say a lot of them were in the early days of doing shows where we were young kids in our 20s, and we'd wake up some mornings and we'd know we had a show in Bloomington, and we'd be like, who's doing PA? How are we getting there? I mean, God bless those days when you could just figure things out on the fly. I'll tell one story that I always thought is one of my favorites. We had played a fraternity party, and those things are notorious for being crazy events anyway. And we drove all the way down to Bloomington and did the show. And now it's 2 a.m, and we were supposed to have a hotel, and it didn't work out that way. So we've decided, well, we've got to go back home. So we make the trek home at about 2:30, and so that we get to Lafayette. And the bass player says, "Oh my God, I don't have my keys," because we're in a rental, like a rental truck.
Oh no!
He's like, "I left my keys at the fraternity house," so we had to turn all the way around, go back, and now it's pushing 6 a.m, and we're back at this house, tearing up this fraternity house, and there's drunken debauchery all over the place, and looking for his keys, couldn't find his keys anywhere. Drive all the way back to Crown Point where he lived, and the keys are sitting on his kitchen table.
Oh, good Lord.
So, yeah,
I'm going to kill you, send you to the moon.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy.
Wow.
But there's a lot of those fraternity days were good fun to look back on retrospectively. But in the moment, these are just kind of those life experiences. But I have gotten to gigs where I got out of the car and realized I'd forgotten my guitar, but now I've got sons that'll blast a guitar to me really quickly, And owning a music store has helped more times than I care to admit, where it's like, oh my God, I don't have this, but I can get it quickly. So
let's give a little love to your music store. It's in Valparaiso.
Yes, it's Front Porch Music, established in 1991. I started off I'll never forget the night of the Rodney King race riots. So it would have been like 92, I believe. I went to this little music store that I'd just heard of, that they had an open mic, and I played Knocking on Heaven's Door and a couple other songs. It was kind of a weird, somber night, but it was this really cool vibe of this place. So I asked the owner there, I said, I'd like to work here, and I was going to school for music business at the time. And so he gave me a job as a teacher, and I started off as a guitar teacher. And I really, really loved the vibe and the feel and everything about the people at the store and the camaraderie. And so the idea came eventually that this original store manager, the first store manager was there for about 2 years. Second store manager was there for 2 years. And then I rounded out the last 27 of them. So no, it's been a great thing. I've made so many friends, and Front Porch is it's basically a store, but it's got a lesson program where I've at times had up to 30 teachers. Right now, there's a few fewer, but we do music lessons. We do guitar, bass, voice, piano, violin, drums. Just pretty much anything anyone wants to learn, we try to help. So we've had as many as 500 students come through there. Back in stronger days when the Guitar Hero thing was going on, and there was a lot of real interest. But we've had a consistent student database for years now, and it's kind of become a bit of an institution in Valparaiso.
Wonderful.
It's been there since, like I said, since '91. So it's a labor of love for sure.
And instruments and lessons make great Christmas gifts.
They do. Yes, I've got gift cards.
Awesome. So we're going to include links down here in the show notes to that store, and also we're going to include links to just about everything else we've been talking about. The Mega Beatles playing at the Civic Auditorium in LaPorte. Ticket information, and I got to give a little shout out to my friend Frank, who was putting this on. Frank, thanks again for doing this. Frank Productions, and we'll include the links to that where you can get tickets. You can get it at the Civic on Saturday night. Also, the website links for you, Chad. What's the best way for people to find out dates? What's going on with the Crawpuppies? What's going on with digital hair? Everything.
Probably the best one, kind of the most all-encompassing one that'll you can go around from is just ChadCliffordMusic.com.
Okay.
And then you can go to there's a link to the Crawpuppies. There's a link to Digital Hair's Facebook page, which, the Digital Hair is not a lot of action, just 2 or 3 times a year. And then Front Porch Music and kind of everything. So I've kind of done Chad Clifford Music just to kind of have an all-inclusive place to start,
Okay, that'll be in the show notes also. Any final thoughts, Chad? Listen, we've been going almost 40 minutes here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we covered pretty much me in a nutshell. I still love playing music, and we'll do it for as long as, I am able and enjoy it. And, you mentioned about music, for those people that are into charitable things, I do love, one of my favorite things about Front Porch Music is that I never refuse any person, child or adult, if they don't have the means to take music lessons, and they, music saved my life, and if I can help other people, we do have a charitable wing of, if people buy gift cards or something for someone that can't afford lessons, that's something I always like to.
What a wonderful idea.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think that there are people out there that, as you look at kids with, depression problems and opioid problems and things, I mean, if I can help any kid or even adult, get through this thing called life together by making a little music, I just think that's a really beneficial thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Another reason why we like this guy. Real good. Final song we're going to feature is another Crawpuppies tune called 3 Little Things. Can you give us the story on that one, Chad, before we go?
There's not much of a story. It's just kind of a blues rock kind of number about, it's a relationship-based song, that we all have been in those relationships where, everything is perfect except for these 3 little things, and that's kind of what that song is about. And, I've come to the realization that, people don't change, but you do learn to gravitate towards the people you can have long-term relationships with, and you also learn to accept people for who they are, and you can love 1% or 99% about things about a person, but it should be, as long as you can find that one thing you love about them. I mean, that's really the key.
Awesome. Very good. Chad Clifford, my guest today on the Someone You Should Know podcast. Man, it's been a real treat to have you on, and look forward to seeing you Saturday night at the Civic Auditorium.
We will rock it.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care, guys.
You say that you're leaving. Let me show you to the door. When it comes to disappointments, I've been down that road so many times before. So don't you tell me how to live my life. Just 'cause you said so, don't make it right. When I think of my misfortunes, and don't you know I've had a few, well, I can bring it all down to 3 little things: the bourbon, the heartbreak, and you. You tell me you love me, such easy words to say when you don't let your emotions or reality stand in the way. So don't you tell me how to live my life. Just 'cause you say so, don't make it right. Oh, no, 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 no. When I think of my bad choices, and don't you know I've made a few, but I could bring it all down to 3 little things. The heartbreaking you. Disappointments, and don't you know that if you, but I could bring it all down to 3 little things. The bourbon, the heartbreaking you, the lies and deception in you. The bad times in you.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.